The crystalline towers of Thalnos reached toward the purple sky like ancient spears. Inside the Grand Council chamber, 3 humans sat across from 7 Valorian nobles whose skin shimmered with silver patterns that marked their warrior lineage. The argument had been going on for 3 hours. 2 noble houses were ready to declare blood feud over mineral rights on a moon. Neither had actually settled yet. Ambassador Day-Wan listened to another round of shouting without changing his expression. His gray hair was neatly trimmed, and his dark eyes tracked each speaker with patient attention. He wore a simple black suit that stood out against the ornate armor the Valorians preferred. When the shouting reached its peak, he raised one hand slowly. The room fell silent. That was the strange thing about the human ambassador. He never raised his voice, but everyone listened. "Honored houses," Day-Wan said in perfect Valorian. "You both claim ancient right to this moon, but neither of you have ancestors who died there. Neither of you have built anything there. You are preparing to kill each other over empty rock." The taller noble, his chest plates decorated with battle honors, slammed his fist on the table. "You dare simplify our honor?" Day-Wan smiled slightly. "I dare to suggest that both houses could mine different sections of the moon. You would both profit. Your children would not have to die. Is that not also honorable?" The second noble started to object, but Ambassador Hana leaned forward. She was younger than Day-Wan, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate everything. "The southern reach of the moon has twice the mineral density," she said. "But the northern reach has easier access to transport lanes. Each section has equal value, just different advantages." She pulled up a holographic display showing detailed scans of the moon. The data was so thorough that both nobles leaned in to study it. Hana continued, "House Torvin takes the south. House Kellis takes the north. You both win. You both profit. Or you can fight for 3 years, spend a fortune, and whoever wins gets a moon stripped bare by war. Your choice." The nobles looked at each other. The tension in the room shifted. 20 minutes later, they were shaking hands in the Valorian way, gripping each other's forearms. The humans had done it again. Another impossible situation resolved without bloodshed. Across the hall, Intelligence Officer Veltara watched through a security feed. She was young for her position, barely 30 cycles with the traditional silver markings of warrior descent, tracing elegant patterns across her blue-gray skin. Her father had been a fleet commander, killed in the war with humanity 10 years ago. She had earned her position through skill, not just bloodline, but the loss still burned in her chest. She studied the 3 human diplomats as they gathered their materials. Ambassador Day-Wan moved with careful precision. Hana spoke briefly to the 3rd human, Taiyang, who was younger than the others and had an easy smile. All 3 of them had been stationed on Thalnos for the entire 10 years since the war ended. All 3 of them were unnaturally good at their jobs. Veltara had been watching humans for 6 months as part of her security duties. She found them fascinating and frustrating in equal measure. They never showed real emotion in negotiations. They never seemed tired. And they understood Valorian culture better than some Valorians did. The memorial ceremony that evening made her suspicions worse. Once a month, both humans and Valorians gathered to honor the dead from the war. It was supposed to promote healing. Veltara stood in her dress uniform as names of the fallen were read aloud. When Valorian names were called, the humans bowed respectfully. When human names were called, the Valorians returned the gesture. But Veltara noticed something odd. As the names were read, most people showed some emotion. Sadness, anger, pain. The 3 senior diplomats showed nothing. They stood perfectly still with neutral expressions. It was the kind of control that came from military training, not diplomatic school. After the ceremony, there was a parade of Valorian military units. It was a show of strength, but also a reminder of the peace. As the elite warriors marched past, Veltara saw Ambassador Day-Wan shift his weight slightly. It was a tiny movement, the kind of adjustment a soldier makes when watching troops. The way he tracked the formation suggested he was evaluating their capabilities, not just watching a parade. An old Valorian veteran standing next to Day-Wan noticed it too. The veteran stared at the ambassador with narrowed eyes, then shook his head and walked away quickly. Veltara made a note to follow up with him. That night she sat in her small office reviewing the diplomats' files. The Valorian government kept detailed records on all foreign officials stationed on their world. The human files should have been thick with information. Instead, they were surprisingly thin. Ambassador Day-Wan, age 53, Appointed to diplomatic service 12 years ago. Previous career, military, details classified. Education, military academy, details classified. Family, none listed. Personal history before age 40, classified. Hana's file was similar. Age 42, diplomatic appointment 13 years ago. Military background completely redacted. Taeyang was 38, same pattern. All three had entered diplomatic service around the time the war was ending. All three had military experience that was hidden behind classification locks. Veltara tried to access the classified sections using her security clearance. The system denied her immediately and flagged her attempt. Within minutes, her supervisor called. "Why are you poking at human diplomatic files?" Commander Resitok asked. His voice carried warning. "Routine security review," Veltara said, "but the files are mostly empty." "That seems unusual for people who have been here 10 years. There was a long pause. "Those files are restricted at the highest level. By order of the High Commander himself. You will not access them again." "Understood?" "Understood, sir." Veltara ended the call, but her mind was racing. The High Commander had personally restricted these files. That meant someone very important wanted the human ambassadors' backgrounds kept secret. The question was why. She spent the next week watching the three diplomats more carefully. Daewon negotiated a trade dispute between Valorian merchants and human corporations. His patience seemed endless. Hana taught a class on human culture to young Valorians, and they loved her. Taeyang met with Valorian military officers to discuss joint defense exercises, displaying knowledge of tactics that impressed the hardened warriors. They were perfect diplomats. Too perfect, Veltara made her decision. She would find out what these humans were hiding, even if it cost her career. She contacted an old teacher from her academy days, a retired intelligence analyst named Thexnor, who had connections throughout the military archives. If anyone could help her dig into the past, it would be him. 3 days later, Thexnor sent her a coded message with coordinates to a secure meeting location. Veltara arrived at the old warehouse on the edge of the city to find the elderly Valorian waiting with a data pad and a grim expression. "You asked about the human diplomats," Thexnor said without greeting. "I found references to them, not by name, but by timeline and location." He showed her files from the war, battle reports with sections redacted, intelligence assessments with blacked-out names. But there were patterns. 3 human commanders referred to only by code names appeared again and again in reports from the worst Valorian defeats. "The patient one," Veltara read aloud. "The negotiator. The young storm. Who are they?" Thexnor's expression darkened. "Humans we feared more than any others. Each one commanded operations that broke us. After the war, these files were sealed. I thought the 3 of them were dead or imprisoned." He looked at Veltara with worry in his ancient eyes. "But if your diplomat's service records match these timelines and if their backgrounds are classified at the highest level..." He didn't need to finish. Veltara felt cold understanding spread through her. The 3 peaceful diplomats who had spent a decade building friendship between their species might be the same 3 commanders who had devastated Valorian forces during the war. The humans who smiled and negotiated and taught children might be war criminals. She looked down at the data pad, her hands shaking slightly. If this was true, everything about the peace was built on a lie, and one of those 3 had killed her father. Veltara couldn't sleep. She lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about the 3 code names. The patient one, the negotiator, the young storm. Each name appeared in dozens of battle reports, always connected to Valorian defeats. Always with the same pattern of careful planning and ruthless execution. At dawn, she made her decision. She would go to High Commander Crossfin directly. He was old enough to have fought in the war, and senior enough to access any file in the Valorian military archives. If anyone knew the truth, it would be him. The High Commander's office overlooked the city from the top of the military complex. Crossfin was a massive Valorian whose silver patterns had faded with age, but whose presence still commanded respect. He listened to Veltara's report without interrupting, his scarred hands folded on his desk. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like wind through stone. "I was wondering when someone would figure it out," he said. Veltara felt her breath catch. "You knew?" "I suspected from the beginning." Crossfin stood and walked to the window. I commanded the defense of the outer reaches during the war. I fought against all three of them at different times. I never saw their faces, but I learned their methods. When the human diplomats arrived and I saw how they worked, how they thought, the pattern was familiar. Why didn't you expose them? Veltara couldn't keep the anger from her voice. They're war criminals living freely on our capital world. Krasivan turned to face her. Because the peace required it. Sit down, officer. This is going to be difficult to hear. He pulled up classified files on his display. After the war ended, both sides were exhausted. We had lost millions of warriors. Earth had lost entire colonies. Neither of us could afford to keep fighting, but neither of us trusted the other enough for real peace. The files showed diplomatic communications from 10 years ago. Krasivan continued. The human government approached us with an unusual proposal. They would send their 3 most effective military commanders to serve as diplomats, not as punishment but as guarantee. These 3 understood how to destroy us better than anyone. By making them responsible for maintaining peace, Earth was showing they were serious about never fighting again. That's insane, Veltara said. You trusted the people who killed our warriors to build peace? We trusted that they had more reason than anyone to make sure the peace held. And we were right. In 10 years, not a single serious conflict has escalated to violence. Trade between our species has grown every year. A whole generation is growing up without war. Those 3 diplomats have done more to protect Valorian lives than my entire military has. Veltara felt sick. My father died fighting humans. He might have died fighting them. Krasivan's expression softened. Fleet Commander Teltara, 7th Battle Group, I knew him. He was a fine warrior and a better friend. He pulled up another file. He died in the Kelran system. The battle was recorded as a tactical loss but an honorable fight. 3 Valorian ships destroyed for 2 human vessels. Your father died well. Who commanded the human forces? Veltara already knew the answer. Codename the Negotiator. Krasivan closed the file. I'm sorry. I know this is hard. Veltara stood abruptly. I need to access the war files. All of them. I need to know what these 3 actually did. That information is classified for a reason. If the public learned the truth, there would be riots. People would demand the humans be arrested or executed. The peace would collapse, then it should collapse. Veltara's voice rose. Peace built on lies isn't real peace. It's just delayed war. Krasivan studied her for a long moment. I'm going to give you access to the files. Not because I think you're right, but because you deserve to know the truth about your father. But once you see what's in those files, you'll have to make a choice. The same choice I made 10 years ago. Some truths protect nothing. Some truths only cause pain. He entered a code into his terminal. The archive is now open to you. Everything we know about the 3 commanders is there. Read it carefully. Then come back and tell me if you still think the peace should end. Veltara spent the next 2 days in the classified archive. The room was deep underground, secured behind multiple locked doors. The files were organized by campaign and there were dozens of them. She started with the earliest reports and worked forward chronologically. The first major file was labeled Operation Silent, Requiem. The Patient One had commanded human forces in the outer sectors during the war's 2nd year. Instead of attacking Valorian fleets directly, the operation targeted supply lines with surgical precision. Food shipments disappeared. Fuel convoys were destroyed. Medical supplies never arrived. The reports from Valorian commanders grew increasingly desperate. Warriors starved in their ships. The wounded died from treatable injuries. Entire bases surrendered without fighting because they had no choice. The Patient One never engaged in direct battle if it could be avoided. The commander simply waited while Valorian forces withered. Veltara read testimonies from survivors. They described the human commander's voice over communication channels. Always calm, always offering reasonable surrender terms. The voice never showed anger or excitement. It was patient, like someone who knew time was on their side. She thought of Ambassador Daewan's patient smile during negotiations. The way he never rushed, never lost his temper. He had learned patience by starving Valorian warriors until they had no choice but to quit. The second file was worse. The negotiator's gambit detailed a campaign in the inner systems. This commander had opened peace negotiations with Valorian fleet commanders while the fighting was still intense. The negotiations seemed genuine. Valorian leaders shared intelligence, discussed terms, and believed they were close to ending the war early. Then the human forces used every piece of information gained during negotiations to launch devastating attacks. Fleets were ambushed at coordinates they had revealed during talks. Commanders were killed by precision strikes because they had disclosed their locations. An entire Valorian battle group was destroyed because they had lowered their shields while negotiating. The file included a message from the human commander to the surviving Valorians. War is not honorable. War is survival. You trusted me. That was your mistake. Veltara found the report on the Kelron system battle. Her father's fleet had been part of a diplomatic escort when the attack came. The negotiator had arranged a meeting, then sprung a trap. 3 Valorian ships destroyed, 2 human ships lost. But the file noted something else. The human ships were already damaged. The negotiator had sacrificed damaged vessels to destroy healthy Valorian ones. A trade that looked even but actually favored humanity. Her hands shook as she read her father's final communication. He had realized the trap too late. His last words were an order for his crew to abandon ship. Most of them survived. Her father had stayed at his post to buy them time. The third file nearly broke her. Storm Protocol described psychological warfare tactics designed by the youngest of the 3 commanders. This one used humanity's reputation as a species from a death world to create fear. The young Storm broadcast horror stories about Earth, about humans surviving impossible situations, about human endurance and human rage. Valorian warriors started seeing humans as monsters instead of just enemies. The broadcasts included real footage from Earth of predators hunting, of humans surviving injuries that would kill most species, of human history's endless wars. The storm added false information too, making humans seem even more dangerous than they actually were. Warriors developed psychological problems from constant exposure to these broadcasts. Some refused to fight. Others became paranoid. The storm had weaponized fear itself, breaking Valorian morale without firing a shot. The file included medical reports of Valorian soldiers who needed long-term psychological treatment because of Storm Protocol. Veltara thought of Taeyang's easy smile and friendly manner with Valorian officers. He joked with them, shared drinks, built genuine friendships. That same person had once made Valorian soldiers afraid to sleep at night. She found one more piece of information buried in the files. After the war ended, all 3 commanders had been arrested by human authorities. They were charged with war crimes, violations of the Geneva Conventions, and breaking human military law. Each was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Then the records went blank. No execution, no prisoner transfers. Just a note that their sentences had been commuted by executive order for diplomatic service. They had gone from prison cells to the Valorian capital world within months. Veltara sat in the quiet archive room, surrounded by evidence of atrocities, and realized Krossovan had been right. Knowing the truth changed nothing except how much it hurt. The 3 diplomats upstairs were still keeping the peace. They were still saving lives every day with their negotiations. But they had also destroyed thousands of lives during the war. She gathered the files and returned to Krossovan's office. The old commander looked at her face and nodded slowly. You see it now. They are monsters. They are also the best chance we have at lasting peace. Both things are true. I can't just ignore this, Veltara said. My father deserves justice. Your father deserves to be remembered as the hero he was. Justice? Krossovan shook his head. For 3 weeks, Veltara tried to work normally. She attended security briefings, filed reports, and watched the human diplomats go about their business. Every time she saw them, her chest tightened with anger and confusion. Ambassador Daewon negotiating a water rights dispute. Hana laughing with young Valorians at a cultural exchange. Taeyang discussing defense strategies with military officers who had no idea they were talking to the young Storm. The worst part was how good they were at their jobs. A mining company dispute that could have sparked violence was resolved in a single meeting. A religious disagreement between Valorian sects that had lasted decades was mediated to mutual satisfaction. The humans didn't just maintain peace, they built actual friendship between the species. Veltara found herself standing outside the human embassy late one evening. She had been walking for hours, unable to sleep, unable to think about anything except the files she had read. The building was quiet, lights off except for a few security systems. She should leave. She should follow Krossovan's advice and let the lie stand. Instead, she activated her security override and entered the building. She made her way to the diplomatic offices on the 3rd floor. She knew the security layout perfectly. She could avoid the cameras and sensors. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Evidence, maybe. Or just something to make her feel like she was doing more than keeping a terrible secret. Ambassador Hana's office was neat and organized. Diplomas from human universities on the wall, pictures of successful negotiations, gifts from Valorian officials. Veltara searched the desk drawers carefully. Standard office supplies, tablets with encrypted files. Nothing unusual. Then she found the small box in the bottom drawer hidden under folders. It was a simple wooden container, clearly handmade. She opened it carefully. Inside were hundreds of small metal tags on chains. Human military identification tags, she realized. Each one had a name stamped into it. Veltara picked one up. The name was Valorian. She picked up another. Also Valorian. They were all Valorian names. She pulled out her datapad and checked the first name against casualty records from the war. Fleet Commander Grentuck killed in action Kelran system. Her hands went cold. She checked more names. All of them were Valorian warriors who had died in battles where the negotiator had commanded. Hundreds of them. Hana had kept a memorial to every Valorian who died because of her tactics. Veltara sat in the dark office holding the box, trying to understand. This wasn't the behavior of someone who felt nothing. This was the action of someone carrying enormous guilt. She put the tags back carefully and closed the drawer. She left the embassy and went straight back to her quarters. She couldn't pretend anymore. She needed to confront them directly. She needed to hear them explain themselves, if explanation was even possible. The next morning, Veltara sent a coded message to all 3 ambassadors requesting a private meeting in a secure location off embassy grounds. She expected them to refuse or to demand an explanation. Instead, she got a simple reply from Day 1. Tonight, Warehouse 7 in the industrial sector. Come alone. Warehouse 7 was abandoned, scheduled for demolition. Veltara arrived early and checked for surveillance equipment. The building was clean. When the 3 humans entered together an hour after sunset, they looked different than they did in public. No diplomatic smiles. No pleasant expressions. They looked tired and serious. Day 1 spoke first. You found out. Krossovan told us you accessed the classified files. We've been waiting for you to make your move. I broke into Ambassador Hana's office last night, Veltara said. No point in lying now. I found her memorial drawer. Hana's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I wondered if anyone would ever find that. Veltara pulled out her datapad and displayed the war files she had copied. The patient one, the negotiator, the young Storm. Those are you. All of you. Taeyang leaned against a support column. Yes, Daewon starved our enemies. Hana tricked them. I scared them into breaking. We were very good at winning. You were war criminals, Veltara said. Your own government convicted you. That's correct, Daewon said calmly. We violated multiple treaties. We used tactics that most humans consider immoral. We did things that still give us nightmares. We were tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. Then how are you here? Veltara demanded. How are you free? Hana stepped forward. Because our government made a deal. They needed diplomats who understood Valorians. Not just your culture or your language, but how you think, how you fight, how you make decisions. They needed people who could prevent another war because they knew exactly how terrible war could be. So they sent their best killers to make peace? Veltara couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. That's sick. Yes, Daewon agreed. It is, but it worked. We volunteered for this mission because spending our lives preventing war seemed better than rotting in a cell. We can never undo what we did, but maybe we could stop it from happening again. Veltara thought of her father. The Kelran system. The diplomatic trap. That was you, Hana. Hana met her eyes directly. Yes, your father was Fleet Commander Teltara. He was escorting a diplomatic vessel. I arranged the meeting, then ordered an ambush. 3 Valorian ships destroyed, 2 human ships sacrificed. The trade favored us because our ships were already damaged. Your father died buying time for his crew to evacuate. She paused. He was a good commander. If he had been more suspicious, my trap wouldn't have worked. The words hit Veltara like a physical blow. You killed him and you remember it like it's just another tactical report? I remember every battle I commanded, Hana said quietly. Every ship destroyed. Every life lost. I have a box in my desk with tags for 423 Valorian warriors who died in my operations. I made each tag by hand. Your father's tag is the 7th one I made because his battle was one of my earliest victories. Veltara stared at her. Why? Because I need to remember. Because forgetting would be worse. Because every morning I wake up and see that box and remember what I am. Then I go to work and try to save lives instead of taking them. It doesn't make up for anything. It just means I'm trying, Taeyang spoke up. We're not asking for forgiveness. We don't deserve it. But you wanted the truth, so here it is. We are exactly what you think we are. Monsters who became diplomats because someone decided monsters might be useful for keeping the peace. Daewon added, the question you need to answer is what you do with this information. You could expose us. Tell the public that the peace is built on blood. Maybe people would demand justice. Maybe the war would start again. Or you could do what Krossovan did and keep the secret. Let the lie protect lives. That's not fair, Veltara said. You're making me responsible for whether the peace continues. No, Hana said. We're just being honest about consequences. Whatever you decide, we won't stop you. If revealing what we are brings you peace or honors your father, then do it. We signed up for this knowing someone might figure it out eventually. Veltara felt tears starting. She had spent weeks angry, but now facing them directly, hearing them admit everything, she just felt exhausted. Do you feel anything about what you did? Or is the guilt just another tactic? Hana's professional mask cracked slightly. I think about your father every time I see you in the security feeds. I think about all of them. The Valorian commanders I deceived. The warriors who trusted my false negotiations and died for it. I used their honor against them because honor is a weakness in war. That's the truth. I can't change it. I have nightmares about the broadcasts I made, Taeyang said. I hear Valorian warriors begging me to stop. I see faces of the ones who broke completely. I made them afraid of humans, and some of them never recovered. I did that on purpose because fear is a weapon. Daewon spoke last. I let warriors starve. I watched supply convoys and calculated how long Valorian forces could survive without food, water, medicine. I made those calculations coldly and accurately. Then I destroyed exactly what they needed to survive. I was patient while they suffered. That's who I am. The three of them stood in the abandoned warehouse, and for the first time since she had discovered the truth, Veltara saw them clearly. They weren't pretending to be good people. They weren't claiming redemption. They were just trying to use their skills for something other than destruction. I need time, Veltara said finally. I need to think about what to do with this. Take all the time you need, Daewon said. We'll be at the embassy doing our jobs. If you decide to expose us, we'll accept the consequences. We always knew this day might come. Veltara left the warehouse and walked through the empty streets. The city was quiet at night. Above her, the crystalline towers caught moonlight and scattered it across the sky. Somewhere up there, her father's memorial plaque hung in the Hall of Heroes. He had died believing he fought honorably against an honorable enemy. The truth was so much uglier than that. He had died in a trap set by someone who used honor as bait, and now that person taught young Valorians about human culture and made them laugh. The person who killed her father was also preventing others from dying the same way. Veltara didn't know what justice looked like anymore. She only knew that whatever she decided would matter for millions of people across two species. Veltara found High Commander Krossovan in the military training grounds, watching young warriors practice combat formations. The old commander didn't look surprised when she approached. He dismissed the training officer with a gesture and led her to a private observation room overlooking the grounds. You confronted them, Krossovan said. It wasn't a question. They admitted everything. Veltara sat down heavily. They didn't try to justify what they did. They just explained it like reporting facts. Daewon talked about starvation tactics. Hana described killing my father like she was describing the weather. Taeyang admitted to psychological torture. And yet you haven't exposed them. You're here instead. Because I don't know what's right anymore. Veltara looked out at the training ground where young Valorians practiced with traditional weapons. Those warriors down there have never seen real war. They've grown up with peace. If I expose the truth about the ambassadors, this peace might collapse. Those warriors might have to fight and die. Krossovan settled into a chair across from her. Let me tell you about the last days of the war. We had lost over 3 million warriors. Earth had lost entire colony worlds. Both sides were preparing for a final battle that would have killed millions more. I was part of the Valorian command staff discussing strategy. He pulled up old tactical displays. We knew we couldn't win against human tactics anymore. The patient one had broken our supply lines. The negotiator had made us afraid to trust any peace offer. The young storm had our warriors seeing humans as unstoppable demons, but we couldn't surrender because our honor wouldn't allow it. We were going to fight until we were extinct. What changed? Velterra asked. Earth's government reached out secretly. They told us they had arrested their 3 most successful commanders for war crimes. They said humanity was as sick of the war as we were, but they needed a guarantee that peace would hold. They offered to send those 3 commanders as diplomats. The message was clear. These are the people who can destroy you. We're making them responsible for protecting you instead. Crossovan zoomed in on casualty projections from the final battle plans. We estimated that battle would kill 5 million Valorians and 7 million humans. Instead, we took the deal. The 3 war criminals became ambassadors, and 10 years later, not a single life has been lost to war between our species. But the lie, Velterra protested. Everyone thinks the peace is based on mutual respect and understanding. If they knew it was built on putting war criminals in charge of diplomacy, they'd feel betrayed. Would they? Crossovan asked. Or would they just be uncomfortable with how messy real peace actually is? Peace isn't made by pure and innocent people, Velterra. It's made by people who understand the cost of war. Those 3 diplomats understand that cost better than anyone. Velterra thought about Hana's box of metal tags. Hana keeps a memorial to everyone she killed. She made identification tags by hand for over 400 Valorian warriors. Why would someone do that if they didn't care? Guilt is a powerful motivator, Crossovan said. Maybe the best motivation for someone in their position. They can't undo what they did. They can't bring back the dead. But they can spend every day preventing more deaths. That guilt drives them to be exceptional at their jobs. My father deserves justice, Velterra said quietly. Your father deserves to be honored, and he is. There's a plaque with his name in the Hall of Heroes. Every year at the memorial ceremony, his name is read aloud. Young warriors learn his story. That's how he's remembered. Crossovan leaned forward. But justice? What does that look like? Arresting Hana? Executing her? Would that bring your father back? No, but it would feel right. Would it? Or would it just feel like you did something? Crossovan pulled up images of the memorial ceremony. The 3 ambassadors attend every month. They stand and listen to the names of everyone who died in the war, including the people they killed. They bow respectfully. They never miss a ceremony. Is that not its own kind of punishment? Velterra watched the images cycle through. Day 1 standing still as names were read. Hana with her neutral expression hiding whatever she felt. Taeyang bowing low when human casualties were announced. They're performing. They have to appear respectful for diplomatic reasons. Are they? Crossovan asked. I've watched them for 10 years. I've studied their body language. When Valorian names are read, all 3 of them have the same physical response. Slight tension in the shoulders. Controlled breathing. They're using techniques to manage emotional pain. They're not performing respect. They're surviving guilt. He switched to different footage from negotiations and diplomatic events. Watch them work. Daewon never loses patience no matter how difficult the parties are. Why? Because he spent months being patient while warriors starved. He knows how to wait. Hana reads people perfectly and finds solutions everyone accepts. Why? Because she learned to understand how people think so she could manipulate them. Now she uses that skill to find real compromises. Taeyang connects with military officers on a personal level. Why? Because he studied Valorian psychology to weaponize fear. Now he uses that understanding to build genuine friendships. Velterra saw what Crossovan was showing her. The same skills that made them effective killers made them exceptional peacemakers. That doesn't make what they did acceptable. No, it makes it useful. There's a difference. Crossovan turned off the displays. You want them to be either monsters or heroes. But they're both. They were monsters during the war and they're heroes now. Both things are true. Most people can't handle that complexity, so we hide it. I confronted them last night. They said I could expose them if I wanted. They wouldn't stop me, Crossovan nodded. They probably mean that. They've been waiting for this moment for 10 years. They knew eventually someone would figure it out. They prepared to accept consequences. Then why am I the one who has to decide? Velterra felt frustration rising. They should face trial. Both governments should publicly acknowledge what happened. Should they? Crossovan asked. What happens then? Both populations learn their governments lied. Humans feel betrayed that their war criminals were pardoned. Valorians feel betrayed that we accepted those criminals as diplomats. Trust breaks down. Extremists on both sides demand justice. The peace becomes fragile. Maybe it holds. Maybe it doesn't. Are you willing to risk millions of lives to satisfy your need for honesty? That's not fair. You're making me responsible for everyone. No, I'm making you responsible for your own choice. The government's already made theirs 10 years ago. I made mine when I chose not to expose the truth. The 3 ambassadors made theirs when they volunteered for this mission. Now you have to make yours. There's no right answer. There's just the answer you can live with. Veltara stood and walked to the window. Below, young warriors were laughing as they practiced. They looked so young. Her father had been young once before the war aged him. Before Hana killed him. Tell me how he died, she said. Not the official report. The truth. Krossovan was quiet for a moment. Your father suspected the trap. The tactical records show he hesitated before accepting the meeting coordinates. He sent a coded warning to other fleet commanders before proceeding. But he went anyway because refusing a peace negotiation would have looked bad politically. He knew he might be walking into an ambush, and he went anyway to give diplomacy a chance. Veltara felt tears start. He died trying to make peace. Yes. And the person who set that trap is now actually making peace happen. There's a cruel irony in that. Krossovan stood and walked to stand beside her. Your father was my friend. If I thought punishing those 3 diplomats would honor his memory, I would have done it years ago. But I think he'd want what he died trying to achieve, real lasting peace. How do you know what he'd want? Because I knew him for 20 years. He was a warrior, but he hated war. He used to say the greatest honor wasn't in winning battles, it was in preventing them. He believed fighting should always be a last resort. Krossovan put a hand on her shoulder. He'd be proud of you for discovering the truth. But I think he'd also tell you to consider the cost of revealing it. Veltara wiped her eyes. I need to talk to them again. Not to confront them. To understand them. I need to know if their remorse is real or just another performance. How will you know the difference? I don't know yet. But I have to try. Veltara straightened her uniform. Can you arrange a private meeting? Somewhere completely secure where we can speak freely? I can do better than that. Krossovan pulled out a communication device. I'll have them come here, to the military complex. Let them walk through halls decorated with memorials to warriors they killed. Let them face that before they talk to you. You'll learn something from watching how they handle it. He made the call while Veltara watched the young warriors train. Within an hour, the 3 ambassadors arrived. Veltara watched them on security feeds as they entered the complex. Guards escorted them through corridors lined with honor plaques and memorial walls. Daewon walked steadily, but his eyes tracked every name on the walls. Hana paused once at a memorial listing casualties from the Kelran system. Her hand reached out but didn't quite touch her father's name. Taeyang stared straight ahead, but his jaw was tight with tension. Hana's words hung in the air. She looked directly at Veltara, and for the first time there was no diplomatic mask, just exhaustion and pain. After the war ended, I was in a cell waiting for execution. Hana continued. Human military law allows death penalty for war crimes. I knew I deserved it. Every night I closed my eyes and saw faces. Valorian commanders who trusted my negotiations. Warriors who died because I lied to them. Your father's face was one of the clearest because I studied his tactical patterns before I set the trap. Veltara felt her breath catch, but she forced herself to stay quiet, to listen. Then Earth's government made the offer. Become diplomats. Use our skills to build peace instead of war. Spend the rest of our lives making sure what we did never happens again. Hana's voice was steady but strained. It wasn't mercy. It was the hardest punishment they could give us. Death would have been easy. Living with what we did, facing the people we hurt every single day, actually having to help them. That's hard. Daewon spoke next. I commanded Operation Silent Requiem. I have reports listing exactly how many Valorian warriors died of starvation or disease because I destroyed supply lines. 3,417. I know every number. I calculated those deaths deliberately and precisely. That's what I am. He leaned forward slightly. In prison, I could pretend those numbers weren't real people. I could tell myself I was following orders, doing my duty, winning the war, but here, I meet Valorian officials whose family members starved in my operations. I negotiate with merchants who lost business because of my tactics. I can't pretend anymore. Every day I face the consequences of what I did. Every day I try to build something instead of destroying it. Taeyang was last. His easy smile was completely gone. Storm protocol broke warriors psychologically. I made broadcasts designed to terrify. I used everything humans fear about ourselves and aimed it at Valorians. I turned human nature into a weapon. He looked at Crossvan. You were there. You heard those broadcasts. You remember? Crossvan nodded slowly. I remember. My warriors started having panic attacks. Some refused to fight. A few took their own lives because they couldn't handle the fear you created. I know, Taeyang said quietly. I read every report. I studied the psychological impact. I knew what I was doing to people, and I kept doing it because it was effective. In prison, I told myself I saved human lives by breaking Valorian will to fight. But the truth is simpler. I tortured people without touching them. I'm a torturer who now shakes hands with the people I hurt and pretends to be civilized. Veltara had expected them to defend themselves or make excuses. Instead, they were being brutally honest about what they were. It was harder to hate them. When they agreed with every terrible thing she thought about them, why should I believe any of this is real? She asked. You're expert manipulators. The negotiator specialized in making people trust her. How do I know this isn't just another performance? Hana met her eyes. You don't. That's the thing about people like us. Even when we're being honest, it looks like manipulation. Even when we're trying to help, it looks like we have hidden motives. We destroyed our own credibility during the war. We can never get it back. Then why should the peace trust you? It shouldn't, Daewon said. That's why we work harder than any normal diplomats. We have to be perfect because we have no room for error. One mistake, one failed negotiation, one hint that we're not completely committed to peace, and everything falls apart. He gestured to the memorial walls outside. Every day we walk past the names of people we killed. Every negotiation we handle could be with someone who lost family to our operations. We live in constant fear that someone will recognize us, will figure out who we really are. And we know that when the truth comes out, we'll face consequences. We've always known. 10 years, Veltara said. 10 years of pretending to be good people. No, Hana corrected. 10 years of trying to do good things. We're not good people. We're war criminals doing the jobs we're suited for. It turns out, the skills needed to destroy civilizations work equally well for protecting them. It's the same skill set, just pointed in a different direction. Crossvan spoke up from his position by the door. I've worked with them for a decade. I've watched them prevent countless conflicts. I've seen them negotiate deals that saved lives. Whatever their reasons, whatever guilt drives them, the results are real. The peace is real. Veltara turned to the High Commander. You said you had to make a choice 10 years ago, to expose them or protect the peace. I thought you chose the peace, but watching you now, I think you chose something else. You chose to use them. Crossvan didn't deny it. Yes, we're using them. They're using their guilt as motivation. Everyone is using everyone else. That's what peace looks like when it's built by people who understand war. It's not pretty. It's not honorable. But it works. My father died honorably, Veltara said. He deserves better than this. Your father died trying to achieve peace, Crossvan replied. He got peace. Not the clean, honorable peace he probably imagined, but real peace that has lasted a decade and saved millions of lives, including yours. You were 15 when the war ended. If it had continued, you would have been drafted. You might have died too. The truth of that hit Veltara hard. She would have fought. She might have died in one of the operations these three commanded. Instead, she had grown up, gotten educated, built a career, because these three war criminals had become diplomats. I hate this, she said. I hate that you're right. I hate that using them works. I hate that my father's death was part of a bigger game that led to peace. I hate all of it. Good, Hana said. You should hate it. It's hateful. War is ugly, and peace is ugly in different ways. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. Veltara stood and walked to the window. The young warriors were still training below, laughing, practicing, preparing for battles that would hopefully never come. She thought about what would happen if she exposed the truth. Protests, anger, possible collapse of the peace. Those warriors might actually have to fight. What happens now? She asked without turning around. Daewon answered, That depends on your choice. You can expose us. Tell the public who we really are. We won't fight it. We'll accept whatever consequences come. Or you can keep the secret like Crossven did. Live with the knowledge that the peace is built on blood and lies. Either way, you'll have to carry this for the rest of your life. That's not fair. No, Hana agreed. It's not. Nothing about this situation is fair. Not to you, not to your father, not to anyone who died in the war. But fair isn't an option anymore. We can only choose between imperfect solutions. Veltara turned back to face them. She studied their faces carefully. Daewon with his patient expression that came from learning to wait while people starved. Hana with her sharp intelligence that came from learning to manipulate trust. Taeyang with his friendly demeanor that came from learning how to weaponize fear. All three of them were exactly what they appeared to be. Monsters. And also the best chance at lasting peace. I want conditions, she said finally. If I'm going to keep this secret, I need something in return. Name them, Daewon said immediately. First, I want full access to all war records, every operation, every battle, every decision. If I'm protecting this lie, I need to know exactly what I'm protecting. Agreed, Daewon said. I'll arrange access to human records too. Second, I want regular meetings. Private. Where you answer my questions honestly. No diplomatic language, no manipulation, just truth. Hana nodded. We can do that. Third, I want to be part of the diplomatic process. Not as staff but as a liaison. I'll represent Valorian interests and make sure you're actually working for peace and not playing some longer game. That's reasonable, Taeyang said. Having oversight makes sense. And fourth, Veltara said, looking directly at Hana, I want you to tell me everything about my father's death. Every detail, every decision you made, every calculation. I need to know exactly how and why he died. Hana's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes showed pain. I'll tell you everything. It won't be easy to hear. I don't want it to be easy, Veltara said. Easy would be exposing you and feeling righteous about it. This is harder. This is living with complexity. Crossven moved away from the door. Then we have an agreement. Officer Veltara becomes part of the diplomatic security team with special oversight of human operations. The three ambassadors continue their work with full transparency to her. The public never learns the truth unless absolutely necessary. One more thing, Veltara added. We create a complete classified record. Everything. The war crimes, the convictions, the diplomatic mission, all of it, sealed for 50 years. When the people who lived through the war are gone, future generations can decide how to judge this. They'll have all the facts. They can choose whether we were right to maintain the lie. Daewon considered this. A time capsule of truth. That's acceptable. It means eventually the truth comes out, just not while it can still destroy the peace. Agreed, Hana said. The other two nodded. Over the following weeks, Veltara's life changed completely. She was officially transferred to diplomatic security with a special assignment. She began attending negotiations as an observer.